Hello, my little mathematicians. This is just a quick little extra practice on absolute value for some of those weird ones. So if you want to go ahead and copy down these 8 problems and then hit pause, I suggest you do so. Hit pause, copy them down. And now you just unpaused and we're back. Okay, you have them written down. Now we're going to go through and actually try to solve them. So the first one, notice the difference between these and 3 through 8. These are parentheses. These are absolute value bars. So the parentheses aren't absolute value signs. It's just saying for number 1, what's the opposite of 8? Well, the opposite of 8 is negative 8. The second one is saying, what's the opposite of negative 8? The opposite of negative 8 is a positive 8. That's a review from before. This is the absolute value ones. Numbers 3 and 4 are the most common type that we'll see, like 90% of the time. The absolute value of 8 is just 8 because it's 8 away from 0. And the absolute value of negative 8 is still a positive 8 because it too is 8 away from 0. Again, 90% of the time, those are how you'll see them. But then we have these weird ones, 5 through 8. Let's talk about those. My suggestion is, first of all, take the absolute value first. So do the inside part. The absolute value of 8 is 8. And then the opposite of that is a negative 8. The absolute value of negative 8 is a positive 8. And the opposite of positive 8 is a negative 8. Okay, inside the absolute value sign says the opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. And the absolute value of positive 8 is 8. That's different than this one. First of all, the opposite of a negative 8 is a positive 8. So the absolute value of positive 8 is 8, but you have that negative out in front saying what's the opposite of that positive 8? It's a negative 8. The main thing to take away is take a look at numbers 3, 4, and 7. Notice that there was no negative in front of the absolute value sign. That's the most common thing. So you're just taking the absolute value. When you just take the absolute value, you end always with a positive answer because absolute value is talking about distance, and distance is always positive. But it gets a little tricky when you have that negative out in front of the absolute value signs. That's then saying what's the opposite of the absolute value of that number. Well, because absolute value is always positive, when you're asked to do the opposite of it with that negative out in front, your answer will then end as a negative. So again, when you have no negative sign in front of the absolute value signs, no matter what's inside, no sign out in front will result in a positive answer. But when you do have a negative sign out in front of your absolute value signs, it will end in a negative answer because the opposite of a positive is a negative. All right, hopefully that helps it. You guys can write this down and practice it a little bit more. Good job at mastering yet another standard. And again, 5 through 8, those are tricky. They don't happen that often. It's mainly like 3 and 4. And 3 and 4 are different than 1 and 2. Those don't have anything to do with absolute value. There's no absolute value signs. That's just saying the opposite of 8 and the opposite of a negative 8. All right, until next time.